Right, having got our line where I'm going to put the bars, I've marked that line with pins. Placing the top now onto the bottom part, I'm going to mark where my bars are going to go, and I've already done two, so I'm going to put my pin in and more or less make a cross piece. So where that meets, that's where the middle of my bar will be sewn. So going down to the next one, right in the middle there, that's where my bar will be. I'm just going to carry on now to the bottom. That's the very last one. I've already done the very first one, and I'll just show you how that goes together. That's your bar, and I'll show you how to make one of those. So when your hook goes into the bar, it looks a lot tidier than a metal eye. Right, I've got my reference point. That is going to be the line where my bar will go on to. So I'm going to bring up, you can use a single thread, you don't have to double that. Using a sharp needle, come up to one side of it, about 4 millimeters, all the way through, and then go down about 4 millimeters the other side of your pin. Like that. That is going to be your bar. Now that I've got my first bar in, I can actually take that out of my way so I don't keep catching it. Okay, so then you come from the back, you come up where the first stitch was that you started with, and go down exactly in the same place where you went down the last time. I'm going to do this about 4 or 5 times, coming up and going down in exactly the same place to create my bar. I'll just do one more and then that should be done. Oh, lost my thread. Okay, I'm going to go down into that now for the last time, and then I'm going to come up. This is a bit further over. Should do. Okay, now then, because I'm dealing here with a very unpredictable mesh with very small holes, using a sharp pin, I need to go underneath all these loops. So what I'm going to do at this point is change my needle to a blunt-ended needle, like a tapestry needle, to make it easier. There we go, all threaded up. Now I'm going to go and make a lot of blanket stitches, which means that I'm going to move my thread out of the way to start with. Then I'm going to go through all of those loops and pull the needle up, and as I pull the needle up it's going to create a knot, and as it starts to get tighter I'm going to move the knot over to the right, and I'm going to go around again with my thread, keeping it out the way, go through all of the loops, pull it through till it's starting to create a knot, and I'm going to pull that one up against the first knot I made. And you're going to continue to do this until you've used up all of your loop space. I'm just about to do my last knot now, which has taken me all the way to the end, like so. Now I'm going to change it back to my sharp needle. Okay, done that, so I'm going to go down into the original hole that we started with, to the back of the garment, turn it over, and now I'm just going to do a few knot stitches just to hold that in place. Cut that off, and now I have my second loop. I'll just demonstrate to you how that will fit. You get your hook, and that goes onto there like so. And I think this is a lot neater than showing metal hooks.
Okay, so this is the moment of truth to make sure the hooks and bars line up. So I'm just doing a fitting to make sure, and it's looking pretty good. So you can just see down the back here all the hooks and bars are lining up lovely. So it's all looking pretty good at the moment, and the next thing will be my favourite part, not, is doing the sleeves, in which I'm now going to go and jolly run across the town to the other side and stay there while I leave Mum to do it. Okay, so now moving on to the sleeves. I originally had quite a few weird and colourful and wonderful ideas for what I wanted. I thought at first I wanted these great big sleeves, so I did a trial run with a great big puffy sleeve here and an inner liner, but it just looked really, well, you can see it just looked saggy mess more than anything, and it wasn't really in the end what I thought I wanted. So I went on to this limited edition dollar I've got, and I like the sleeves on that, so I had a go, and I was quite chuffed with what I've done, but in the end I couldn't quite get that shape to fit the armhole on the bodice very well, so I had to come up with another plan. So I've gone back to a conventional, more or less traditional puff sleeve pattern. I basically got a sleeve pattern similar to this shape from another pattern I've done before, and just extended it a little bit and widened it in the middle because I want a bit more in the middle and I want to get it narrower towards the end kind of look. So we're going for that. So first I'm just doing this practice run in some ivory broderie on glazed cotton, just to see how that's going to hang and fall, and basically see what it's going to do and how it's going to behave, which is what we do with everything to start with before I make the final decision on what fabric's going to work best. So I've got my sleeve pattern here, and I'm going to run a gathering stitch along the top, but I'm going to do it in two halves. So I'm going to start at the top here and do forwards and backwards so it's nice and tight, and then run off the end here, and it'll be stitch length number 4, so quite a wide one, and then I won't do forwards and backwards at the end here because I want a tail to pull to gather the stitches. I will then start again here at the top and go to this point here, and that's about a centimetre in from your edge, and then along the bottom more or less the same, but you have to remember that these ends are going to form a seam when it goes onto your arm, so you will lose off the end 1.5 centimetres. So start off by marking 1.5 centimetres in, and then you need that mark to be 1 centimetre up from the bottom. So I've just done 1 centimetre marks up from the hem. So that's where I'll be running my gathering stitch along the bottom. Now I've folded the sleeve in half and I've sewn up the side seam on the sleeve. As remember, this is just a practice run. We're just going to show you the process because this is important to get in the shape that we'll need to actually do these strips that I've got in mind, which you'll see later on. Okay, I've now totally detached the sleeves, and I've also unpicked the side seams, trying to keep these gathers in, and you can now see that it's a slightly totally different shape to what I began with. And this is why you need a bigger sleeve pattern, because of all the gathers you'll be putting in. So you can see it's shrunk down quite dramatically now. So what I'm going to do is try and make some strips to actually fit and be the right shape for this sleeve, because this is now the size that it would be if it was around my arm with all the gathering in.
Okay, we've now just tacked the sleeve back in, and what I've done is I've attached these strips to get an idea of how long they need to be and what sort of angle they need on here to fit into the sleeve. And we're going to butt the strips up against one another. This last one though is not quite at the right angle that I want, so I've reshaped it, and I will cut that into the new angle to fit in. And the same at the back here for the very last one. I've not got the angle quite right, so I've put a pin in there where I'm going to recut it to fit into the sleeve. And depending on whether Tracy is happy or not, I'll be able to work out how long these strips need to be, and I've just pinned them on temporarily around there just to get an idea of what it looks like.
Okay, right, so now now we've got these in place. This is the bottom here, this is the top. I've now totally detached the sleeve from the armhole again. It's like the second time I've done this now, but basically now all the strips are cut and to the sort of angles that we're going to need, I can now detach the strips off this and make some proper paper patterns for them. Okay, right, so now I've got all my panes detached and in the shapes that I'll need. I'll also have to remember to add an extra 1.5 cm seam allowance at the top, because they've just lined up with the sleeve as it was in the armhole right on the edge, so they weren't actually lined up with the edge itself, so I must remember to do that. And I've marked them all. I've put T for top so I don't get them confused. And I've also marked them as first left centre, second left and third left, and then first right centre, second right and third right. And now I'm just going to make up some paper patterns out of these pieces for myself. So using my panes that I've taken off, I've now turned them into proper paper patterns, labelling them all so I know where they go and which side is which side. I've also done some proper straight lines on them as well, and I'm just going to give this a go, and I'm just going to do a practice run first to see how they turn out.
We've just made up a mock-up of the sleeve, and we've made a better mock-up of the straps to see what they're going to look like. We've made these a little bit narrower just to see what the look would be like and how much puffiness we're going to get from the inner lining. And if I just turn you around, Trace, there you go. And this is what it will look like at the moment. But then Tracy may well change her mind again.
Okay, now I've cut out these strips properly, and I'll show you how to do them in a bit. This is just a trial run. I found that they're still not quite wide enough to meet at the, because I really want them to meet at the top of the bottom, which they're not doing. They've got gaps between. So I just need to, although I did add that extra seam allowance, I think I need to add a little bit more on the width just so they meet at the top and the bottom a little bit better. Okay, so I'm now going to make a start on the main sleeve here, and I'm using this white cotton. This is pure cotton. This is not a polyester cotton. It's not a cotton lawn either, because that's too thin. I just saw this, so this is 100% cotton. It's soft, but it's got a little bit of stiffness to it, just a little bit, but it's quite nice, so I've gone with that. I'm now going to cut out 2 sleeves from this cotton. Okay, so you can see here I've cut out my piece. I've left a bit extra around the edges because I want to overlock this and make a nice neat edge. It just helps make your garment last a little bit longer rather than just sewing it in with an edge. Even though it will have a sewing line where it's joined and make a seam, I just think it will helps make your garment last a little bit longer. Depending on how many times you're going to wear it. So that's why there's a few, about 5mm more around the whole edge, because by the time I've cut that off on the overlocking machine, it's going to chop a little bit off the edges, so it should be about the same size as a pattern piece by the time I've done that. Okay, you can now see that I've neatened and overlocked the edges on my sleeve, which again also makes it a little bit stronger. So I've got my 2 sleeves here ready to go. Next I want to put some of this nice lace over the top of it. But unfortunately, as you can see, it's not wide enough, so what we're going to do is split it and add a piece section to the top, so we'll show you how to do that now. Okay, so what I'm doing is I've laid this 8cm wide lace over it as far as it will go upwards. You can see it just about reaches the top corners of the sleeve. So I can get most of it in apart from the top piece. So for now, just start pinning it in place. Okay, so now on both my sleeves here, I've cut out at least 3/4 of the shape of the sleeve, as I just mentioned, and that just leaves this bit at the top to match up. Okay, so cutting out a piece from the extra lace I've got left over, I've cut a piece off the bottom where it had some of these roses, because you can see here I've got 2 rows of roses and I don't want too many roses clashing into one another, so I thought the pattern should start from where the next vines are going. So overlap it by about 1 centimetre or 1.5 centimetres, just so can just about see it there, like so. So you've just got a bit of an edge because you're going to be sewing that down to attach it. So I'll just pin that down in place and then cut around it. Okay, so I've now cut around that. I've also just pinned this lace together, the lace without going through to the white cotton, because I need to be able to lift this whole piece off in a minute and sew those sections together. Okay, now what I've done is I've got some thread here. I'm going to do this by hand. I just showed an example here of one done on the machine with a zigzag stitch, and it doesn't look particularly very nice. So I'm going to do this by hand with some thread. Basically, I'm just going along the top of the roses here, and I'm just trying to follow the direction of the satin stitch on the roses so it blends in and you can't see it. I appreciate this is probably a bit hard to see, but because it's all white and it's net. But I'm basically just doing little tiny stitches. Trying to blend it in as much as possible with the rose patterns, and I'll just do this all the way along to the other side until the two pieces are sewn together. Okay, so now I've sewn these together, I've now successfully joined my pieces together at the top there and made it look like one complete sleeve. The next part will be actually overlapping this lace with the shape of the sleeve. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sew a line just a few millimetres in along the edge to secure them both together. You don't have to go down the sides, but you can do, but I will be also running a sewing line along the bottom. That is just to hold them in place, so say just a few millimetres in so it joins them all together as one piece. And do that for both sleeves. I've now sewn the two pieces together and you can just see my sewing line there all the way around. I decided to do the ends anyway. I wasn't going to, but I decided to do them. And you can just see in places that there's a bit of excess some places, so I'm just going to trim that down so it meets, it looks a little bit neater, and then we'll go on to the next part. Now I've done that, I'm just going to fold my sleeve in half, like so, line up those ends, and I'm going to get my halfway point at the top and the bottom and put a pin there so I know that's exactly my halfway. Okay, now what I'm going to do is run 2 gathering stitches. I'm going to run it across the top, but I'm going to do it to 2 halves, that's why 2. So I'm going to start about here, my stitching, and anchor it off and make it strong, go backwards and forwards a few times, and then run it in, literally just half a centimetre in, or probably a centimetre actually, yeah, maybe a centimetre, sorry, in until I reach the halfway point. I'm then going to leave 2 tails sticking out. I'm not going to anchor it off or go backwards and forwards, and then I'm going to start at the other end about here and then run it across the top and finish at the top there. I'll then run a gathering stitch across the bottom. Okay, now you can see here I've got 2 lots of tails that I've left. Sorry, I'll just put them over there. You can see them now better. There we go. Obviously when a machine sews you get 2 threads at the top and 2 at the bottom, so just trying to, there, I got it. So there's one for pulling the left side, that one's for pulling the right, and at the bottom here you just secure it at the end tight and then just run your gathering stitch on long stitch length, I should have forgot to say, leaving 2 pulling tails at the end to pull your gathers in. Okay, what we're doing now, we're taking our sleeve and we need to fit fit it into the armhole of the bodice and gather it up properly so it fits the armhole, pretty much like we were trying to do early on the practice run, so that we get an idea of the size it's going to shrink to, ready to put the panes or strips of fabric over the top. Okay, so just temporarily we've put some pins at the side to represent the seam of the underarm there. Then of course we had our halfway mark at the top there, and then halfway between the end and the middle you need to put in a set of pins again, one each side, for your quarterways. And Mum is just doing that on the bodice as well, so that she knows where the quarterway is around the armhole, and the halfway point obviously will meet up with the strap, and the other halfway point should meet up with the side seam of the bodice for your underarm.